Good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Hayseed night, where Adder here was just on his way to work when he ran into a wall and then met this mischievous, mysterious young lady who seems to think that they have met before. But Adder is like, nah, we have never met before. If I had met you before, I would totally remember you. And yeah, that's where we're continuing from. Adder is now very, very late for work, but also doesn't want to leave this young lady here to make her way through the slums alone, unescorted.
Now, if you could get on your knees, You know what? Maybe you should see a doctor after all.
Joseph! There you are!
Now, seriously?
In less than a blink, the gazelle's smile was back on her face. She turned to face the voice in the distance. It belonged to a doe in similarly flashy clothing, hurriedly stomping her way towards Joseph, apparently.
You called?
We've been looking everywhere for you!
And so you found me. Congratulations. Now, if you don't mind...
Miss Rochelle's had us searching for hours! She wants you back immediately!
Well, I'm kind of busy, so... Would you be so kind to go tell her to find someone else to bother while I catch up with my friend here?
The fair's about to start! Head back already or you'll get us all in trouble!
The red-haired woman held her breath for what felt like an eternity. The entire world seemed to slow down to match her pace, afraid of moving another second forward.
I'm sorry. Was that an order?
What? Miss Rochelle said...
Say, do you know what happened to the last wench who had the gall to order me around?
Joseph's grin remained glued to her face, but her eyes had narrowed down to a squint, sharpening her long eyelashes even further.
I don't...
Care to find out?
The doe looking for her stammered, color drained from her mien. After a few tense seconds, Joseph clapped her hands.
Oh, sorry. Was that too much? Don't make that face, honey. I'm just joking here. I'm not idle enough to begin picking fights with my sisters, don't you think?
Right.
Then that's settled. Let's go.
Joseph whipped her tail as she spun in the opposite direction, making the choir of bells that hung from her hips announce her leave. Adder hadn't quite planned on sticking around so long, and he positively didn't mean to spy on anyone. He was just worried, of course, but now with good reason. The withdrawn gazelle that had so eagerly tried to convince him of their acquaintance had all but vanished, and the terrifying lady that took her place seemed to have forgotten all about him. Barhan or not, Adder didn't have many chances to make new friends, especially in the upper echelon, to whom he owed a great deal of kindness when his dinner depended on it. He thought it wise, therefore, to introduce himself before this strange beauty left his life for good.
Wait!
Yes.
His call came out a little more desperate than he intended, and who could blame him? He had found himself petrified at the sight of her all over again. Her bright red hair curling into messy waves behind her neck, her horns shining in such a deep reflective black, her long fluffy tail, lazily wagging behind her, captured halfway through a step. What was a nobody like him doing talking to a woman like her? Why would she even bother so much as to look back? Otter's heart skipped a beat, and once he realized so, he would have sooner had it stop beating altogether. No, no way! I wasn't looking at her, Otter yelled internally. Beads of sweat began falling from his temples as his face became even more flustered. There's no way I... Flustered as he was, he barely registered the gazelle walking down the few steps that separated them. As if meaning to aggravate his inner turmoil, Jasiv smiled one last time with a mischievous glint in her eyes.
Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you. It's your turn to find me next, handsome.
Otter was so many things. He was goofy, he was loud, he had a smile that could light up a whole town, he was gigantic, and yet, if there was a thing he'd never call himself, it was, no doubt, handsome. After all, a buck's worth may as well be as large as his horns are, and his were, well, tiny, almost childlike. So, that offhanded compliment, that mere insinuation that someone found him actually good-looking, made his heart flutter. And by flutter, I mean it may as well have burst out of his chest right then. So, for just 1 second, he forgot that the lady in front of him was horned. For a moment, he forgot all the horrible things he'd heard about gazelles and those who fancied them. His face turned red, his jaw came loose, but had he been able to articulate, he'd have found he'd completely forgotten the ability to talk. He still knew how to do one thing, though. Run. This time, his shame was stronger than the wall.
Wait, what? Stop right there. What was that last bit?
The bit about the wall or the Oh, I see. Ruminants haven't always been so successful at living together as they are now. Wars, gods, horn shape, all the excuses to be different used to make a lot more sense to mortals back then.
No, I know that, but there's no way the knight would have thought something so awful.
Adder was a young, insecure stag in a time when every rove felt the need to deny having a single drop of Barhan blood in their veins. Why would he think any different?
Why wouldn't he? That's the point, isn't it? That he was different from the rest. How could he believe any of that crap?
How should I know? I never had anything against gazelles.
Sounds like you weren't a whole lot bothered by those who did, though.
You're right. I wasn't. I just thought that there always had to be someone to punch down on, and I spent all my energy making sure that that would never be me. That was the world as I saw it, and I never hoped it could be any different. I never wanted it to change. Adder, though, I think he never meant to do that to anyone. I think he just hadn't realized that there was more to the world than the fears he had been raised with. He had to butt heads with more than one type of wall in his life. I could be wrong, of course. His understanding could have been yet another pretense, and he may have very well lied about wanting to fight with the rest of us until his very last breath. No, I'm sure he did grow to be a wise and kind man, Lynn. Much wiser and kinder than I ever was, at least. Neither of us would be here making excuses for that dumbass otherwise.
Well, I don't care about you, but he'd better rise up soon. I have high-quality standards for my ancestors.
I'm glad you do, kid. Now, where were we? The sun was already up in the sky by the time Adder managed to remember that he was supposed to go to the bazaar.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to arrive so late. Please don't kill me.
But lo and behold, there was no one around.
Ha! What do you know? First again. I'm gonna have to ask for a raise at this rate. Oh, hold up. Now ain't the time for that. Andy could get here at any... Boss! Ha! Gotcha. You're gonna end up giving someone a heart attack if you don't quit sneaking up on people like that, you know. Right. Don't you think for a second I forgot I was supposed to prepare the stall. No, ma'am. But, you know, days are getting longer, and it's harder to sleep at night, and the streets are real crowded, and...
Aina's silent glare told him that she didn't believe a single word, but she didn't care enough to pry either.
Hey now! Quit giving me that look, missy! You got here late too.
She pointed at her hair. Drops of silvery green water were dancing on her tips, painting the ground beneath them.
How is it my fault that you were busy dyeing your hair?
Leaving him with that perfectly valid question unanswered, she walked back to pick up a big bag she'd left a few steps away. She lifted it up with a single hand and then headed towards the stall, closely followed by Adder. It was about time that they began working. A sudden thought popped up in Adder's mind as he helped her set up their carpet.
So, how come the patron ain't here? It just gonna be the two of us today?
Aina simply shrugged.
You won't tell your pa I got here late, right, boss?
She punched his arm with such strength that she almost made him fall sideways.
Ow! What did I... Oh, damn. Sorry, boss.
This little reminder that that was a sensitive issue effectively killed the conversation. People from all over Heirloom began congregating in the bazaar, turning the walled plaza into a sea of spice, trinkets, and deer. The currents of that sea were still difficult to understand for Adder, who often found himself pushed to the ground in the busiest hours. Today would be especially lively. It was the beginning of the Dawnsoon season, and so the festive equine had to make sure to bid a proper farewell to the rain clouds, so they'd be back again by the end of it. A pleasant change from Adder's usual day-to-day, working in Aina's forge under the continuous risk of suffering a heat stroke or third-degree burns. Or that's what he thought at first.
Welcome, welcome! We got the best prices in town! Come on and see what goods we offer!
There was no reaction whatsoever to his incessant yelling. Other than Aina snickering at him for trying so hard, that is.
Sure must be fun watching me break my back so your dad won't yell at us.
With a long sigh, Aina sat up and cast a tired glance over the carpet. She reached out and grabbed a small shiny dagger. After checking its sharpness against her gloves, she began stabbing the air as possible customers approached the stall, attempting to showcase its intended use. Otter quickly put his hands over her shoulders, discreetly bringing her arms down.
You know what? Nah, take that back. There ain't no deer in the world that works harder than Aina of the Test. There just ain't. A hard worker like you deserves a good rest every once in a while, so just let me take care of this, boss.
He did his best attempt at a natural smile. Aina, who couldn't care less about any of this, simply shrugged and sat back, still wielding the knife. She let her hand fall on one of the stones that paved the bazaar and effortlessly tore it from the ground, deciding that it'd serve better as a sharpening tool.
You do you.
It was best to leave the issue alone. Otter had figured out quite some time ago that Aina was a creature of habit, and her habits included steadfastly refusing to put any effort into anything she didn't care about. But it never really bothered him at all. There was something fascinating about watching her get completely absorbed by whatever task she had chosen to focus on, really. Otter never quite had that level of dedication to his craft, if he even had one. She could hammer tirelessly at a single hunk of metal for hours at a time, if the piece required so, all while judging others' every move with the same intensity. She was just as capable of sitting in a corner and glaring away the hours while she sank deep into her own imagination. That's why he immediately knew something was off when she turned her face away from the dull knife of her own accord.
Huh? What's wrong, boss? Wait, is that... Oh, no. Don't tell me he's coming this way!
Aina wasn't going to tell him either way, but coming this way he was. He, being Otter's worst one-sided nightmare. The Almotazen of Heirloom Souk, Tailed the treasurer, followed by his pale retinue. Otter didn't even have time to yelp before the merchant among merchants politely announced his presence with an ancient greeting.
Tasakirmat, Miss Tess. I'm aware of how hectic the stall must be today, so I won't keep you long. I simply realized what a rare occasion it is to see you out in a crowd, so I thought I would take a moment to come and pay my respects to you. I hope you'll find some solace seeing a familiar face among the hustle and bustle.
Aina's eyes turned sharply away from Tailed, closely accompanied by the tip of her knife. The stag's head followed the motion, only to find the eerily immobile set of deer waiting by his side.
I understand the apprehension you feel towards my company, but I'm afraid these are the only escorts I can ever trust with my back anymore. It's a dangerous world out there for people like me. Speaking of which, where's your father? Has he considered my latest proposal? Or will I have to send any more of my people his way?
Otter didn't miss the way Aina's fingers clenched around the dagger she was sharpening.
Holy horns! Check out that Buck's grapevine, boss! It's gotta be the biggest tree I've seen in my life from root to branchlets. Darn! That shrub's worth a fortune, I'm telling you. And trust me, I'm Chanchurian born and raised. I know a thing or two about giant trees.
Einar didn't bat an eye at the interruption, while Taylor didn't even seem to hear him. Their bizarre staring contest remained strictly a two-person business. Otter never was one to give up so easily, however.
Yep, sure'd be nice if we could have a plant like that dragging our stuff around. Oh, it's a real shame the patron don't plan to bother showing up today. We could have tried to convince him together. Whoever buys that tree is going to show the world he's a deer with class. Ain't that right, ain't it?
Otter needn't do anything more remarkable than put a hand on Einar's shoulder to make Taylor shoot a look in his direction at last. It was but a brief glance, a glance best reserved for a slug crawling up your leg, a glance so scalding that it could make weeds wilt and crumble to dust within seconds. The kind of glance that would normally precede the untimely death of an elongated yellow stag. As Adder's luck would have it, however, recognition set in the merchant's gaze just at the right moment. An unsettling half-smile formed in his face instead.
Ah, yes. I remember you now. Geoff's little paramour. The oversized one-eyed fawn that wanted to be a knight. 1 Durandun for a full set of armor was what you requested, if I'm not mistaken.
Nope. Yep. Sir, I'd never dare say you're mistaken, but I doubly not dare say so when it comes to numbers. Imagine it. Poor farm boy could barely count trying to tell the Taylor how money works. Darn, just thinking about it cracks me up. No, sir, I can't. I just can't believe for one moment the most famous loner in all the heirloom would be so kind to remember a dumb buck's dumb dreams, much less his ugly friggin' mug.
Of course. I never forget a face, no matter how weathered or insignificant. That'd be remiss of me.
Taylor nodded to himself thoughtfully, giving Otter a chance to discreetly crawl behind Einar. Despite the yellow stag's desperate inner pleas, Taylor's eyes soon shifted towards him again.
Forgive my curiosity. I just can't help but wonder. How can a country boy with ambitions as great as yours go on living day after day, knowing he can't aspire to more than his deplorable life? Geoff can barely stay sober enough to feed himself, never mind someone twice his size. It must be exhausting, staying alive.
Oh, no, not at all. We manage. Sorta.
Taylor's soft features drew closer to Otter, but he barely even noticed. His only eye remained glued to Taylor's bodyguards.
It's not too late to consider the offer I made you back then. Let me put those deformed hands of yours to better use. I could give you the armor and the money to pay for it now, if you come work for me in the sewers. It won't be much worse than whatever the blind witch has you doing.
That's mighty kind of you, Mr. Taylor, but it's poor manners to consider job offers in front of your own boss.
You make a fair point. Perhaps once I've torn that red scab off our guild's back then. Aina.
Taylor finished his farewell with a bow, and thus left the moneylender at last, followed by the delayed rhythm of a Calcacerous march. Otter's body had somehow contorted into being nearly indistinguishable from Einar's at this point. He needed a few more seconds to thaw out of that position.
Divine beeswax, I'm crawling out of my skin here. Who the hell you laughing at now, huh? That weirdo ain't no joke, you hear me? Last time I talked to him, it only took me shoving my hoof in my mouth half a second to swish, get a blade on my neck. And all I could see out of this eye was the creepy face of one of those golem.
Eina's ears perked up, though her gaze remained firmly locked on the blade.
No, yeah, of course you'd find it funny, Miss Tess. Paying my respect sure is a fancy way of saying he got the hots for you.
Otter barely avoided getting his liver punctured by an extremely flustered Eina. The hours passed by slowly and painfully, for they were completely ignored by any passerby. Well, actually, avoided rather than ignored. It was no surprise. The merchant, Otter's patron, and his mute daughter were two of the most despised people in the city. In spite of the incredible variety of antiquities and smithery that the merchant had for sale, no one ever bought a single thing. And there were plenty of reasons for that. Even Otter had some serious doubts about working for an old Barhan man whose fur was redder than blood, and an albino smith that insisted on dyeing her hair green. The fact they worked independently from Heirloom's Traders Guild probably had something to do with it too. In any case, it was well after noon, and they hadn't done anything but sit around the whole day. Otter pressed his lips together and began drumming his fingers against the floor. He looked askance at Eina, hoping his subtle call for attention had stirred her curiosity. But there was no answer. He'd have to be the one to actually break the silence, as usual.
So, hey, Aina. I bet you're still wondering just what in the world could make a hard-working buck like this one get here so late this morning.
Aina stopped hitting the rock with the blade. She barely moved her eyes towards Otter.
Well, buckle up, because there's a whole story there. This got to stay between you and I. But, this morning,
Ran through a wall? Saw a gazelle? Ran through a wall.
I ran through a wall. Good thing I have a thick skull, right?
Otter's attempt at starting some sort of one-way conversation fell short. Yet another awkward silence ensued. He feared in those long seconds of quietness that his words hadn't been heard, or worse yet, that they were, but he was to be ignored for eternity. No, that couldn't be. He'd surely worried her too much.
Of course she'd be concerned. What kind of idiot runs straight into a wall and then brags about it?
I shouldn't have told her that, he lamented, thinking of ways to excuse himself for such a dumb thing.
Ow! What's that for? What? You get mad when I worry about you, and you get mad when you worry about me? That ain't fair, ma'am. I'm gonna get real mad at you next time you punch a wall. Real mad. Please don't punch any more walls. Someone's gonna fix them holes for you.
The best way to define Eina's smile at that precise moment would be terrifyingly mean. While her bad temper was known and feared among the other merchants, it was unusual for her to be so acidic, especially towards Otter. Our dear boy couldn't help but notice this change, and he wasn't going to keep it to himself, of course.
You're acting real ugly, boss.
The smile on her face vanished, replaced instead by a grimace. In response to this affirmation, Aina merely shifted her gaze back to the blade and resumed her task, pretending she hadn't heard him. But if Otter was known for one thing, it was his incessant need to stick his nose in everyone's business.
What's wrong, Aina?
A wrinkle formed over her nose as she focused on keeping calm, but Otter didn't get the message.
Come on, don't just keep everything to yourself. You know there ain't a single thing in the whole of Dakna you can't tell me.
No sooner he'd finished that sentence, Aina slammed the dagger she was sharpening against the ground, effectively sinking its tip in it.
Right. I know there ain't a single thing you can tell me either. This is one of them metaphors things Gaff loves. He says that a hushed mouth ain't got nothing on an open heart.
Aina got up all of a sudden, her face red in anger. Otter was preparing himself mentally for the beating that he expected would ensue. But instead, she just plopped down on the ground, sitting with her back against his. Our dear Buck was puzzled, to say the least, but Aina didn't even make a sound. She just sat behind him, completely still and hidden from the public eye. Of course, the possibility of getting whacked in the head was now more real than ever, so Adder didn't even attempt to guess why she'd ever do that.
What was the patron thinking?
Well, he probably didn't expect you two to play, hide and seek in the stall.
Otter and Aina immediately jumped away from each other, doing their worst best attempt at looking half professional. A thunderous laugh resonated over the ruckus of the bazaar.
Kilogram?
It's respectable Illigrab Bund Hollows to you, boy. But please, don't hold back on my account. I'll just look the other way. What?
And so appeared the man that was so red that it would seem he'd stolen all the color his daughter was lacking.
Patron!
Ah, so he gets the respectful treatment and I don't. I see how it is.
What's that salacious doll cop doing to my daughter now?
They're just strengthening their ties of friendship. Ah, or is this a budding love?
The merchant shook his cane, hitting Illigrab's twiggy leg with a loud thunk. The tree man just wiggled his mustache in response.
Whoa, 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 whoa! Hold up. We weren't doing anything, patron.
That's the problem, you cumberground! You lighter sack! You...
A coughing fit saved Ader from more old-timey insults, which he could barely comprehend. Once he'd recovered, the merchant put his bearded face next to Otter's, resting the tip of his cane on Otter's chest. He opened his toothless mouth slowly, his breath reeking more like bleach than liquor.
You haven't sold a single thing, have you?
Now, that's hardly their fault, Red.
I'm sure this Yaltson was just frolicking with my daughter as usual!
She's old enough to frolic as she pleases.
She hasn't even come of age yet!
Of course she hasn't. There's no way for her to pass that right.
Of course there is! She just needs to open her mouth and stop being an idiot!
The only idiot here is the one talking, patron. Aina's just mute.
I wish that rub off on you! then maybe you'd learn to keep your mouth shut when adults are talking!
But I did pass the coming of age right, sir! I got them adult horns and...
Shut up! Don't you have anything to say about this, insolent child? Aina?
She walked away while you two were arguing.
Then why didn't you say so sooner, you overgrown sapling?
She looked like she needed it.
This is all your fault! And yours!
He stabbed Adder's nose with the tip of his finger.
What did I do?
That stupid child's been acting up since you first arrived!
Don't blame the poor boy. She's always had an attitude, and you know it.
I don't care! You two'd better go bugger off somewhere else. Or I swear to Arab that I'll hit you so hard that you'll be cropping at your teeth for a week!
Both Adder and Illigrab winced at that.
Now hold up, what?
Come on, Adder. Those two clearly want some alone time. And he'll have plenty of that when I leave him tied to the pyre next time I find a mob outside the shop.
Illigrab took Adder by the cape and lifted him off the ground as they walked away. It didn't take Illigrab long to notice Adder's unusual reticence to speak.
Please, don't let Red's words affect you. He's, worse today. There's a storm coming from the west, and it's making us old people nervous.
No, the patron can preach and holler all he want. That don't bother me much. I mean, I don't cry anymore, at least. What he said to Aina, though? Now that's going 2 paces past the league too far. So what if she can't swear the oath thing? The 3 won't get mad at her for being mute. And anyway, Aina don't gotta pass no right. It ain't like she's getting married any day soon, right?
There. Got it all out of your system, boy?
You know what? All this stuff I'm saying means radish stew if I don't say it to her face. I gotta find her and make sure she's all right.
Illigrab didn't reply to that last affirmation. He placed Adder carefully on the ground and patted his cape to straighten it.
Well, in that case, I have to go back to keeping watch on the fair. So, this is where we say goodbye for today. Hey, I'll send someone to fetch you if I see her, okay?
Adder nodded resolutely. They waved goodbye to each other. And then the buck just stood there wondering where to start looking when the bazaar was half a league from gate to gate. Yeah, that's a pretty big area, and a busy one too. So, doesn't seem like an easy task to find a specific person. Well, I guess we'll get to it in the next episode. See if we can find Aina and make sure she's okay. Her father was quite harsh. So yeah, it's no wonder that Otter is concerned. We have some Encyclopedia entries to look at. Actually got a couple of new ones in this episode as well. And once again, if you're not interested in learning about the stuff in the encyclopedia, then you can stop watching this episode here, because all I will be doing from this point until the end of the episode is reading a couple of entries from the encyclopedia here. But if you are interested in hearing about this stuff, then stay with me and we'll take a look at it together. I think we'll at least look at the seasons right now, because we have kind of heard some names that seem to be the names of seasons, and it would be interesting to learn more about them. So here's a brief review of the climate throughout the year in the equine steppes. The equine calendar is divided into 10 moons, grouped into 3 major seasons for religious reasons. Flower sense, usually lasting between 1 and 3 moons. Dawnsoon, which reliably lasts around 6 moons. Bleak night, which rarely lasts more than 2 moons. You can read more about each season in the following pages. Flower sense, the most forgiving season in Akasor, with mild temperatures, occasional rain, and abundant food. This season officially starts with the first bloom of the sacred truce tree. This season holds a variety of festivities in honor of Ahimai, the oldest brother, asking him for good harvests and to keep his beasts away 1 more year. A deer's first marriage traditionally takes place in flower sense to be properly blessed with fertility and strength to endure their life together. Superstition has it that marrying again in the same season will instead cause the new wife to wilt away like a flower before Dawnsoon arrives. Dawnsoon, the hottest season in Akasor, when clouds migrate back to far beyond the mountains of the spine of Ahimai. This season officially starts with the first... Is that supposed to be ripened? Fruit of the sacred truce tree. There won't be rain in the equine steppes for 6 full moons, and once the clouds return, they bring ice with them as a present from the frozen lands. A famed festival takes place every year during the first week of Dawnsoon in Heirloom. Though it is nowadays seen as a farewell party to the lesser gods that live in the clouds, it was originally a Barhan celebration involving offerings to appeal to the Joseph's leniency. Bleak night, the coldest season in Akasor, with frequent snow and cold winds coming from the sea. This season officially starts when the last leaf falls from the sacred truce tree. Famines have been a bit more forgiving in this season since the equine began planting tubercules as a way to save space and accidentally figured out that they were resistant to the cold. Nice, we did learn that famines were a big problem. What else? Let's learn about these beasts. We've had some references to them. Parents all over the steppes tell their children that these horrible creatures will come and feast upon their flesh if they don't behave. What are these monsters said to feel nothing but an intense desire to devour and destroy? Created by Ahimai during the War of Two, the beast's only purpose was to exact revenge upon Baitai's creations, the deer that had taken over Dakna. They were defeated and destroyed after one of their own shared their only weakness with the deer. Baitai Baitat, rewarded him by granting him immortality and a deer-like appearance, thus becoming the immortal High King Isifik that still rules over Akazor to this day. Wise people know that they shouldn't fear the monsters they can't see, but rather the ones they do. Okay. So the beasts were defeated, then they no longer exist? Golem. Lifelike puppets created by Cephis during the Barhan Rebellion. They were built to carry specific tasks, from serving tea to wreaking havoc, and resemble equine with the sole intention to mock the deer. Tradition dictates that their frames are made of brass, porcelain, or marble, making the bulk of their body. An inner core made of rock crystal and silk, fur grass, or real hair, decorating their heads and tails. Upon purchase, they would bear the mark of the gazelle that had bought them, forsaking all connection to their creator. Most were destroyed during and after the Barhan Rebellion, so the ones that remain reach quite a high price among collectors. Let's read about the magic as well. The Sephi head. Seph is the name received by Barhan practitioners of Sephihet, a highly sophisticated form of reality alteration, what the common folk boil down to mere magic. Sephihet consists of the manipulation of the Hatsa itself, using godstones as a source of energy, or, for more advanced practitioners, one's own emotional responses. Deer and magic. As much as deer distrust anything they cannot hit with their antlers, Sephihet is as necessary to their comfort and success as it was in the heyday of Basakserat. Therefore, deer have schools where the same concepts are taught, under a different name, of course. Zarzagon is the term used for equine wizards, who did their absolute best at rebranding to avoid associating any negative connotation to their watered-down version of the same concept. Alright. I think maybe that's enough for now. We could maybe get into the religion at the end of next episode. We'll see. But for now, I'm ending this episode here, and in the next one, we'll see if we can find Aina and see if she's okay. For now, thank you so much for watching and spending a little of your time with me here today. It was lovely to have you. Please remember to be kind to yourself. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you again next time.